attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. We appreciate you joining us tonight for our webinar. I just wanted to say we're going to give it about one more minute for some other people to join the call, and then we will start momentarily. Good evening and welcome to our webinar regarding technology in your practice. I would like to introduce Barry Baresi, who is the CEO of OcuHub. He is a nationally recognized expert on national health policy and clinical operations. He has led OcuHub's growth initiatives, corporate strategy, and business and product development. He is a prior executive director of the AOA and CEO of AOA Excel. He is a graduate of Holy Cross College and the New England College of Optometry and has a PhD in health policy and management from New York University. You can see a more detailed biography on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Melissa, for introducing the program. And I'd like to take a minute to introduce the principal presenters in tonight's program, two colleagues and dear friends, Dr. Chad Fleming and Dr. David Jaco. Dr. Fleming is a graduate of the Oklahoma College of Optometry, practices in Wichita, Kansas, and as you can see from his bio, he's a man for all seasons. He's very involved in organized optometry. I first met Chad when he was a student, and very active in the AOA volunteer structure. He's the founder of optometryod.com. He's a consultant on various healthcare issues with companies and does quite a bit of speaking. So it's great to have Dr. Fleming with us this evening. We also have Dr. David Jaco, who's a practitioner based in Kentucky. David's a graduate of Southern College of Optometry. Also, David's got a great career in both practice and in contributing to his profession. He's past president of the Kentucky Association. I was very involved in their efforts. As you know, quite a leader in policy and scope of practice expansion for optometry, and quite a bit of technology background, as is the case with Dr. Fleming. The sponsor for tonight's evening event is OcuHub. We're a healthcare information platform and services company, helping payers, health systems, and doctors integrate eye care services into mainstream healthcare delivery to improve outcomes, quality, and reduce costs. One of the central features of the company was really developed in our work within AOA is the benefits of being part of an integrated delivery system. I think what you'll learn from the comments tonight is that to be part of the mainstream of healthcare, to be able to control your destiny, your path to success, as well as how best to embrace a technology that can allow your patient. It's advantageous to be a member of a community of collaborating optometrists and collaborating ophthalmologists and collaborating primary care physicians. So we think that's a big part of the future of healthcare going forward. The role we play as a company is to build integrated eye care networks, bringing together optometry and ophthalmology, and offering the growth potential for new health plan patients and new hospital system patients for integrated eye care. The way we're going to conduct today's evening session is to focus on a couple of key questions. But we have the ability also to, through our chat mode, if you look at the bottom part of your your desktop, you can chat with us and bring a question to our attention. We'll also open up the microphones near the end of the session so you can follow up with questions directly. But we welcome you to pose questions to us using the chat mode. With our panelists on board, we're going to start with a key question that is, I think, important to everyone these days in optometric practice, and that's how you're using technology in your practice, with specific emphasis on workflow, benefiting the patient, and a very interesting development in recent years about how we see a lot more optometry to optometry, colleague to colleague technology use for care collaboration. So, David, why don't you kick it off and your own experience of using technology in your eye care practice?
Okay. So I'm kind of a techie geek, I guess you'd say. I've got a closet full of things that I've tried over the years that didn't work, but I do have a handful of things that have worked well. And everything that I've tried has been really to go electronic. The more you can get away from the paper and ink, the more efficient the office becomes. So simple things like e-fax, electronic reminders, getting away from the postcards, all those type things do free up your staff to spend more time with patient care. You're also more efficient financially as well, so you don't have some of the ink cartridges and toners and so forth, and it does free up your office. But where we've really spent most of our time in the last years is with the EMRs. We've been focused heavily in the meaningful use aspect of things, which we all know is the cause I'm probably bald, and the stress that everybody's tried to meet those meaningful use measures. But through all that, it has actually taught us a better way of doing things. We're doing better now with moving. We try to increase our diagnostic testing, so the VEPs, the OCTs, the fundus photos, all of those type things that integrate well within your EMR, which offer it's a better patient care benefit, and it really does bring optometry into the forefront in the patient's eyes and puts us on an equal basis with other healthcare providers. And that's one thing I really like about with the electronic movement, the technology movement. Optometry oftentimes kind of gets put to the side in the healthcare arena, but with the technology and what we're capable of doing, we not only play on an even playing field now, but we actually lead the way in a lot of cases. Our patients come in now and can't believe that the technology that we have at our fingertips. I've got folks that will come in and say, each year you always have something new, and I think that's kind of eye-opening and impressive to the patient. So just the different technologies and the way we tie it all together make it simple for the patients to see and understand makes a pretty good impression on our patients. Chad, how are you?
Go ahead, Chad. Dr. Fleming.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate what you said, David. I would second a lot of what you've said. To add to that, we use technology, and we've seen it grow our practice in how we've not only interacted with patients, but also interacted with not only the medical community with the PCPs and ophthalmology, but also from OD to OD. One of the things that we've used technology for is to open our office up for single doctor practices, whether they're commercial or whether they're a smaller practice that is wanting to utilize technology that maybe they are at a point that affording it's not realistic for them, from an OCT to an Optos to even visual fields. I know we've got some colleagues that we partner with who are in commercial settings that don't have the setup to do testing for pathology that they need to, and so we've created arrangements using technology in communicating to where they can actually schedule appointments The doctor can be sitting with that patient, and their assistant or that doctor can schedule appointments with myself for a second opinion, or schedule appointments for special testing only, to where the patient is sent to our office and maybe an OCT is done and an Optos photo is done. And then with technology, we're able to get that right to the patient, right to the practitioner within an hour or two. So we've used that, and that's been a really popular thing for the ODs who are coming out of school fully trained in medical optometry, but because they're just coming out and not having the means to afford all the technology, it's a way for us all to collaborate and work together, and it's seemingly working really well. And then having the capability to communicate in a way that we can send them full images digitally that they're able to interpret and do reports on. So we found that technology has really helped grow the practice in that area for us.
David, what about collaboration? I know maybe describe your environment, your work environment with Kentucky Eye Care Associates, and the kind of collaboration that you're doing and how technology enables it.
Yeah, so we've got 6 locations and 10 optometrists and an ophthalmologist in our group. And several years ago, say 7 or 8 years ago, before HIPAA got involved, we were able to move the information, consult letters and referral notes back and forth through regular email. And of course now we can't do that through regular email. And so there was a time there that we were really having to rely more on paper and faxes and so forth. And our staff, it was just very bottlenecked and just stacks and stacks of paper and shredding paper and so forth after the fact. But now with the technology that's available, we can send. We're back in the good old days where we can actually move this information to our cataract surgeon. If we need to send to a retinal specialist, we can send those images to a retinal specialist, and they're there before the patient shows up. And so we can also send the consult notes, the insurance information, so that when the patient shows up, the receiving doctor knows what's going on and what we had seen, so they can compare with the information they find that day. It truly becomes a virtual clinic. It's nice to think if you were all in one building and we were in a multi-discipline practice, and if I had a question about a retinal situation, for instance, I could go right next door and bring the retinal specialist in to the patient. Obviously, that's not always the case, and most times is not the case. But now with technology, we truly are a virtual clinic where that image can be sent to the retinal specialist, and we can review that online in front of the patients, and it's just as though that patient's or that receiving doctor's right next door. So it has made our referral world a much smaller world. It's impressive to the patient that I'll use the expression, we've got the bat phone. You know, Commissioner Gordon wouldn't be nearly as impressive with Batman if he had to look up his phone number each time and didn't have that colleague to colleague mentality. But when I push this button and that referral surgeon can see that information right then, it really steps up the confidence in the patient's mind that I have a real close working relationship with this surgeon, and this patient may have seen me for 20 years. And so if I say that this surgeon's good and we have this great working relationship, it really boosts that receiving doctor's confidence in the patient's eye up. And so it really has kind of shrunk our referral center to really just a next door mentality. And again, our staff love the new technology and the fact that we can send direct messages now. I tell folks, if we try to take direct messaging out of my office right now, I'd have a staff person that would meet you in the back alley and fight you for it, because it truly has made life much simpler.
Hey, Chad, why don't you comment too? What we've been hearing is about not only does technology can mainstream the eye care provider into the rest of healthcare, but you heard a lot about maybe a wow factor of technology being used to impress the patient, maybe more so the millennials, but what's your experience with that dynamic of technology, visible technology in your practice, and how your patients respond to it, and how they make judgments about you as a doctor in the process?
Yeah, definitely. There's strong evidence not only on the practical part of what I'm seeing day in and day out, but also the studies showing that Generation X, Y, and millennials, and even the baby boomer generation that's embraced technology, and so many have, we've come to expect it. And so when patients come in to an office, they've come to expect certain things that are just second nature. And if you're not embracing some of those technologies, the evidence shows that patients are judging subconsciously that that office may not be as competent or may not be keeping up not only with technology, but that equals medicine. And so there's evidence that we're seeing is patients are coming in, they're making comments, hey, I love the fact that you texted me a day before my appointment, reminded me of my appointment. I love that I can get online, I can look at through the patient portal, I can get on and look at my exam, I can get on and schedule an appointment when it's convenient for me. I can get my prescription online, basically interact, meeting the patient where they're at, and the feedback that we get with that is just referrals. I mean, that's the ultimate compliment is patients coming and saying, hey, my friend told me about your office, that you guys are just, you know, you're up to date, you do a great job, you're very competent in what you do, and you think back at that, the patient you treated, and you're like, all I did was, you know, a myope with some contact lenses, and they're making comments about our competency, and it's the technology. I mean, we use iPads and MacBooks, and we get comments of, you know, wow, you guys must really be up to date on, you know, on your technology. So it goes a long way, Barry, in just the perception that the patient has, and just those subconscious little nuggets that they're picking up as they're walking through the office, and even before they get into the office and they're interacting with our online scheduling to online appointment confirmations to appointment reminders, some of those things.
So there really can be a wow effect then, that they come out of that experience and they want to tell someone about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the ultimate compliment's a referral, and that's when you're getting referrals and you're starting to see these patients who are between, you know, 20 and 40, and they're telling their patients that this clinic has it together. They're very competent. They, you know, they talk about different technologies. That's what people come in, and they come in talking about it. We had a great example is we had somebody new who moved into town, and a high-level executive with one of our airline companies, and she said the only reason that she scheduled an appointment with us, she was looking at 3 different practices that she had got online, had researched, and the reason she went with our practice versus some of our other practices in the area was because she was able to make an appointment online at her time and her convenience, because with technology she's able to request an appointment with all the pertinent data at 10 o'clock at night, and our staff gets back to her with 3 times to pick from. She picks a time, we have all the information, and she's done. She doesn't have to interact with us between 8 and 5 o'clock. And people who are busy, high-functioning people, busy from 8 to 5 during the week, if you don't have technology to make yourself accessible 24/7 for scheduling, they'll find somebody else who's easy to do business with.
Great. You know, let's keep on this theme of growing your practice. And here we've got this question, because you just really related to that, and let's segue into even more of in-depth conversation, because it's one thing to do better for your patients that are there, but I think clearly all doctors want to be able to bring the value of their services to even more patients and grow their practice. So a couple of things I wanted to cover here is really looking at the power of the technology to grow the practice. You've obviously gave some great examples to Chad. And also not only self-referrals from patients, but referrals from your colleagues in medicine, ophthalmology, other institutional providers, and how that all provides a competitive edge. So David, why don't you comment about how you've been growing your practice on the basis of sort of a mutual referral relationship you have with colleagues in primary care medicine and ophthalmology.
Yeah, so we have had direct messaging through OcuHub for a couple of years now, and most EMRs are supposed to have, I guess they all do if they're 2014 credentialed, have a direct messaging piece. But what we've had trouble with in the last couple of years anyway is finding those surgeons and referral sources and that have direct messaging and know what they're talking about. So a couple months ago, our retinal specialist, I was finally able to talk with their information person there, and said, we're really wanting to get information moving through direct messaging, and she had just got on board with their piece for direct messaging, and she was ecstatic that now that we could send the information electronically, they could receive a fundus photo or an OCT image electronically before the patient gets there, which again is just like looking at it in your own office, and so which is much better than a fax of that image or sending it via the patient or sending that in snail mail or whatever. So they are completely ecstatic. They are now sending all that information, the consult notes, back to us electronically, and so as a result of that, we're moving not only moving the patients more efficiently, but they're moving more patients back to us because they can do it much easier. Something else that we're doing here in Kentucky is we are using this technology to impress upon different payers the technology that we have, and we're actually able to get onto some different health plans as a result of having this quality initiative of moving this information back and forth. So, and having the ability to have the analytics, and again, that's where optometry sets itself. We can really start setting ourselves apart by creating the future now, and we are developing, and we're telling these health payers what we do now, what we can do, and we will own the analytics to all that. And so the technology thing is really opening up a lot here in Kentucky, and these folks are saying, these payers are even saying, why do other provider types have what you have? And so technology is really allowing optometry to really shine right now.
I throw up a slide that kind of, you kept mentioning payers, which of course are important to us in growing practices, and it details sort of how the hub works, but I'd be interested with Chad how you've experienced this source of referrals from either from health systems, primary care doctors, expedited by ophthalmology. How is your practice growing these days based upon technology being used to improve your referral relationships?
Well, great question, Barry, and very pertinent to what we've dealt with in the last year when we had presented the concept of how the independents had to remain independent from ophthalmology groups and optometry groups, how we wanted to remain independent, but yet we had to think as a group. One of the ties in that, as you know, we've been users of OcuHub and have communicated to ophthalmology, as David, you had explained how you were doing it with the retina guy. What ended up happening for us is ophthalmology caught the big picture of diabetes referrals and how when they get established, a diabetes patient gets established in our office, they become long-term patients of ours. When they go to the ophthalmology office, they don't necessarily become long-term patients because the ophthalmology doesn't offer them everything in primary eye care from glasses, contacts to the medical model of optometry. So what we found is our ophthalmology group actually went to bat for us with the PCPs and contacted the PCPs who were referring to them and saying, you know what, if you refer to, in fact, it was one of the doctors had connected me with some PCPs and said, you refer to this group and then they will refer to us when tertiary care is needed. And so it was a way that we've, in presenting this model, we've actually generated more PCP referrals because of the ophthalmology seal of approval, because ophthalmology finally realized that if our referring practices are growing, we're growing. And so, Barry, that really took hold for us when we started interacting with the ophthalmology group and kind of creating this independence, remaining independent, but acting as a group.
Yeah, we're seeing that in a number of markets, Chad, and the story comes to us in just how you described, and there's also other perspectives that many of the optometrists that get back to us say, I never realized how I was cut out of accessing diabetic eye exams. In other words, they may have had some experiences of having referrals, but when they put together these arrangements, as you've done in Wichita, they've been surprised and startled with how much they've been missing out of in the current model of care. So I think it's a great story, and it resonates across a number of markets. I want to move to a related issue because we heard some conversations about EHRs and meaningful use, and that relates to really what's happening with meaningful use requirements. Clearly, there have been some changes. There have been some challenges. The incentive payments started some years ago, but obviously, meaningful use was intended to improve the use of technology. Chad, you want to bring us up to date on how you think this program is moving forward and how your practice has responded to it?
In regards to the meaningful use and how we've responded with technology?
Yeah, you may want to, actually, let's have David comment about this first, because David's been quite active in this space, and Chad, we'll come back to you in a minute. But David, what's your perspective on what's happening with meaningful use, and how have you adapted to it in your practice?
Yeah, so the technology in the last couple of years with meaningful use, whether it was stage 1 and really when stage 2 came about, one of the requirements, one of the measures was that transition of care measure. And the rule was you had to move, when you transitioned or referred, 50% of your patient had to be sent electronically. That information had to be sent to the receiving doctor electronically. And we were able to do that because of the OcuHub piece. But what happened was that there was an exemption that if you moved less than 100 patients to a referral, in a referral situation, that you could exempt yourself. And so most providers in the 90-day attestation period were able to take that exemption. So this need for this technology didn't really come to a forefront. And then that's happened in 2015. Then 2016, again, it was supposed to be a year, and then it bounced back to a 90-day period. And so again, most folks were able to exempt themselves out. This year in 2016, it appears that it will be a full year of meaningful use. And so that 100 patient referral is probably we're probably all going to exceed that in a year's time. So now that 50% of all the transitions that you move for cataract surgeons, for retinal needs, for glaucoma, 50% of those have to go electronically. And so the only way that that counts is if you're using a direct messaging piece. And so that's where products like OcuHub come into play. The other thing that's nice about the OcuHub piece is that it connects with all the different EHRs. It's vendor neutral, so it doesn't matter what EMR you're using. It will allow you to move your information to another doctor's setting irregardless of whatever EMR they're using. So that it really comes into play this year of being able to move that information. And again, that digital capability requirements, bullet number 3 there, being able to move, again, I've already said this once, but being able to move those fundus photos and those digital images truly has revolutionized the way patients are cared for, and the way that the referring doctor is prepared to meet those needs when they get there. And that from a staff standpoint, again, it has made my staff's life much easier. Matter of fact, this is the first time I've been in the practice for 22 years, and this is the first time I've ever had a patient or a staff member come to me and ask me if that can be their job, if that can be their responsibility to move this information from my office to another office, because it made life so much simpler, and it was seen as a major step forward. So again, it truly has been a godsend in our practice.
Chad, I'd love you to comment about that. I also put up on the screen just this transitions of care issue and the point-to-point transport of CCDA and images. How is your practice dealing with meaningful use? How have you made it work effectively for your patients and your staff?
Well, to follow up what David said as far as the staff issue, we had a little bit of some rough road in getting them, as we all know on the call, that not everybody changes or enjoys change, and there's always people who are wanting to shoot change down. What we found is that initially it was tough to convince staff that it was going to be a better way in doing the direct messaging instead of the previous way we had done it. And now when they're seeing that we're not having to scan things back in, we're getting everything digital that can connect to our EMR, when they're seeing how easy it is to send multiple transfer of cares, we send, with our cataract surgeons, 90% of our communication is through direct messaging. So they'll send transfer of cares, they'll send us, 8 to 10 of them at one time, and so they're just in a holding box within OcuHub that staff can go in there, find the name, pull them out, attach them to the chart. So it's actually become a lot more efficient, and they've spent a lot less time calling the office saying, could you send us that transfer of care, and then sitting and waiting for it to go through the fax and deal with that. So for us, there's been a huge efficiency. Now that's OcuHub to OcuHub, or within OcuHub. What David had alluded to that I think is really key is this compatibility, that you don't have to, that OcuHub allows you to communicate with all different languages per se. So there's a translator that's allowing you to communicate with anybody and everybody that has a direct message email per se. And that's how we use from our colleague to colleague. For some of our commercial doctors who are not within the OcuHub realm or are using an EMR that is not a mainstream EMR, the compatibility issue has been huge for us, Barry, in being able to communicate and continue to facilitate that information back and forth.
Barry, let me add a little
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to expound on what Chad was saying, when for the meaningful use to count, you have to send this CCDA. It's a continuity of care document, and each EMR creates that CCDA, and it's supposed to be a standard type file, but it's government dictated, so that means that it's anything but standardized. So some EMRs do a little better job of creating that CCDA and putting it in a more human readable format than others do. And some of those documents include pertinent information for the receiving doctor. But for the most part, those CCDAs include things like demographics, allergies and medications, which are great. But as far as if I send a patient to a cataract surgeon, he wants to see more than medications and allergies and demographics. He wants to see refractions and slit lamp findings and pressures and so forth. So we also, and I know Chad does as well, we not only send the continuity of care document, which meets our meaningful use, but we also send a PDF or a Word document along with that. That is basically a human readable consult note for the surgeon that can also be scanned right into their system as well. But it's important to realize that you really need two things here. You need the continuity of care document to meet meaningful use, but to really function and to make this referral pattern meaningful, you're probably going to have to include that chart note as well.
Agreed, 100%, because you still need that direct communication of why am I sending this to the retina guy so he can go directly, okay, it's at 2 o'clock, you're concerned of a tear, and you can specifically get to your concerns. That's a great point, David.
Excellent. One of the things is we move data back and forth, and whether it's information between colleagues or with primary care medicine or ophthalmology, we all have to be concerned with protecting PHI and the HIPAA requirements. David, how are you dealing with HIPAA issues in your practice these days? What are your key concerns, and be interested if you're doing anything with mobile communications as well? And are you worried about compliance issues, either in your own practice or by colleagues of yours who may be at risk for HIPAA issues? How do you see that that environment?
Yeah, so I think it was 2013 when HIPAA really got some teeth, penalty teeth, if you will, and they really started throwing out these big, humongous fines for breaches of security information and patient information. And so everybody got pretty nervous at the time, and I think that's still realistic. And I think our office we've been doing it for a couple of years, and so I won't say we're more relaxed in what we do, but we are more relaxed in that we're doing things properly. And Chad mentioned this a minute ago, they use the iPads and some tablets, and that really goes a long way to protect this patient information in the office. The tablets and the iPads for myself are not quite. I like something just has a little more real estate, if you will. So we actually use an all-in-one Dell, which is about 18 inches. But what makes that nice, and the reason I bring this up, since we're talking about technology, if each of your staff members has their own little tablet or all-in-one, whatever it is, and they carry that from room to room, that information never gets left in the room with the patient. And so you don't have to worry about logging out. You don't have to worry about logging in, which is another time saver, and your office becomes much more efficient. I will also say that if each one of your staff have their own carrying, whether it's a tablet or an all-in-one, then you're actually saving money, because you don't have all those desktops sitting around. So I bet you will. I know in our office that we probably cut down on a third of the number of computers we had in the office by having these tablets and user devices. But again, what makes that nice, and from a security standpoint, that never gets left in the office or in the room waiting on the doctor to come in. So you don't ever have to worry about it. Well, did somebody log off or didn't have to turn around and log back in. So that helps with that part. You can also encrypt those. It makes it much easier, and you meet the HIPAA requirements from that standpoint. But from the other offices, when I walk in other offices, I always get alarmed when I see the monitors turn the wrong way and so forth. But when we start talking about moving this information, it still amazes me that we've got offices out there that are sending things through unsecured email. They are and pretty open and not really worried about that. But there's too many stories out there of the HIPAA police, if you will, showing up and examining these practices and finding these out, and we get just enormous fines. But I think even more worrisome than that are these your last bullet point down there about former employees that leave under bad terms, and they turn a practice in for HIPAA violations. and of course the whistleblowers do receive part of the settlement at the end, and so it's better to do things right, and when it's all said and done, it's easier to do things right, and moving this information and protecting this information, whether it's about direct messaging, whether it's making sure your equipment's encrypted, whatever that is in your particular office, you should be able to sleep a lot better at night knowing you've done the right thing.
Chad, your perspective?
My perspective, it's it's been a tough road. I'd like to spin some positives on this, but it's a catch-22. Is protecting all this information creates more work for the doctors, for the staff, but I think it's extremely important because if we imagine ourselves as patients and going into doctors' offices, we want our stuff to be protected. We don't want it to be out there for anyone to have. One of the biggest things for us that's been a challenge has been the mobile devices. They have been fantastic aspect of optometry and how we practice, but the mobility of them and the ability for them to move outside of the office, where a standing unit, it's a lot more difficult for them to exit the office. So keeping tabs on stuff like that, like David said, encrypting the hard drives, those types of things, I think it's just one of those things. I guess we've been blessed with having an eager new associate who is just chomping at the bit to do whatever they can. So they are our HIPAA privacy officer, and we have been having to pull the leash back on them as they've been wanting to implement all kinds of stuff. But it's been good because we do have staff that don't at times think about how important it is for them to keep their voices down or not be talking about patients' health information. So I think overall, just discussing it periodically has been really beneficial for our team in just how we respect patients' personal health information. So it's been good. I think technology allows it. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I think technology it just allows this to communicate, and when you're watching it, it's less risky in how you're communicating with the personal health information, and allows us to work when we want to and how we want to, as long as we're just watching the security issues. So that's kind of our take.
Let me add.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up encryption because, and both of you said that. I think it's worth maybe emphasizing it again because maybe this is more back during my AOA days, but one of the things that concerned me was the times when there was a piece of equipment that was lost and the practice had not encrypted the drives in that device. And it's a much more serious HIPAA violation when a mobile device is not encrypted, because then you are actually duty bound to inform all of the patients who potentially could have data on that drive. You're obligated to inform them as well as reporting it to proper authorities. Whereas if it's encrypted, it does not require that you contact patients per se. So it's a really important element. Just to comment about that. How do you go about doing that currently?
Barry, it's not that. The thing that scares a lot of people is that they see that as being very difficult because they're uneducated about it or haven't encrypted a drive before, when actually it's extremely easy to encrypt a drive, especially if you're using a Windows unit. They've got BitLocker built into the latest operating systems, and then if you're using a Mac unit, their operating system has a built-in that you can just turn on the encryption, and it gives you an encryption password, and so those are very easy. And then from a mobile standpoint, on my iPhone, I use what's called 1Password, and it's basically a vault that I'm able to surf the web with, put all my usernames and passwords, all of my information, and it's actually encrypted behind that. So there's apps, I mean, when you think about it, when you first think about it, encrypting the hard drive is like, oh great, I'm going to have to pay my IT guy how many hundreds of dollars to do this. when it's basically a simple click of a button to turn it on.
Yeah. This has been great. Let's go back to some of the theme issues we talked about and sort of reflect on what we've covered, and then we're going to open up for questions from our attendees. But when this program began, we talked about technology and how it can be used to mainstream what we do as eye care providers into healthcare, value-based healthcare. We talked about how it's critical for optometrists, our colleagues, to take the initiative and to own their path to success, and that's by becoming part of a clinically integrated network and developing strong referral relationships in primary care medicine. And then we also talked about this WOW approach of engaging patients by showcasing the technology and how our practices are state-of-the-art in how we deliver care and keep patients informed about all aspects of their care. So let's go back. Just any comments and reflection of tonight over mainstreaming, owning your path, or wowing the patient. David, start with you.
Yeah, no, again, I'll kind of reemphasize the fact that optometry really has, we are at a pivotal point right now that we can really shine in the technology world. We can really set ourselves apart. We can really become an equal player in the healthcare field, if not more than equal. We can use this to define what we do and who we are. Here in Kentucky, again, going back to some of the payers, a lot of these payers didn't, and when we talked to these execs, they didn't really know what optometry did. And they didn't, they understood the diabetic part, but they didn't really understand all that we could do. And by using the technology to make those open those doors, not only is it impressive for the patients, but it really starts to expand who we are and puts us more of a pivotable area in the healthcare arena, that we become an equal player with the PCPs and the ophthalmologists and so forth, because we become part of the patient-centered model at that point.
Chad?
Barry, I would add to that a little bit different. I agree completely with what you said, David. I'd look at it a little different angle to kind of add to it. Is technology allows you to create a competitive advantage. There's a reason that we call a self-adhesive a Band-Aid, or we now, no matter what search engine we use, we say we're going to Google it. It's because when you embrace technology and you're on the forefront of technology, then everybody starts looking to you for that. And that's the nice thing about embracing technologies, is that the patients then get that word of mouth out. And once that word of mouth is out about your practice leading in technology, then you're not only going to get referrals through patients, but you're also going to be able to create networks, and you're going to be the first one to these networks that are filtering patient referrals to you. And a lot of that's basically living and making it easy to do business with. You make yourself easy to do business with talking in a language that everyone's already used to, and we just have take a little bit longer to get to the dance in healthcare. So I think competitive advantage is the big wow factors that drives growth to your practice.
Well, I think, Chad, you remember early on when we started talking about technology a couple of years ago, that was very much the mantra. Let's do things that give a competitive advantage to our colleagues that choose to practice this broader scope. But just because you do certain things doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a competitive advantage. You have to put a number of elements together. It's not a simple process. And I think that's a good way to put it. We're going to have a chance here if there's anyone that wants to get access to a microphone here, we can unmute you. There's a feature on this webinar platform where you can digitally raise your hand. If you look at just to the left of your name on the dashboard, there's an icon of a hand. So we're going to keep talking here, but if anyone does want to get access to the microphone, we'll unmute you and give you a chance to bring up a question. As we're watching for that, you guys, I don't know if the audience knows how much you have collaborated, the two of you, over the years, even with the distance from your practices from Wichita to Western Kentucky. But I'm going to take a chance here and have David ask Chad a question. David, do you have something you want to pose to Chad? Something you'd like for him to reflect on?
Now, yeah. David, you have to stay within the boundaries here.
I was going to say, everybody knows how nervous Chad is at this point.
Exactly right.
Wow.
That's the point.
Right. So, Chad, tell us a little bit, and you kind of talked a little bit about it before, but explain a little bit more about how your. I remember you telling me one time that with this transition of care piece with meaningful use, that you had that the ophthalmologists there in Kansas weren't real big about going through technology, but once they realized that they may be losing a piece of the pie if you couldn't send things electronically to them, but that kind of shook their world up. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Oh, that's a great question, David, because you're right. That's been a huge tipping point for us in our relationship with our ophthalmology group. When I say our ophthalmology group, they do probably 90% of our cataract surgeries, 95% of our cataract surgeries, and that's primarily what they do. They continue to move forward on paper, and we are we attested to meaningful use, our doctors did, and so we're moving forward with that. Well, I had a chance to meet with their lead ophthalmologist, or the owner, and him and I visited, and I basically said that, hey, we're going to have to look at all the patients that we referred to you in X number of months. Now take 5% of that and subtract it, because I'm going to have to find somebody that can transfer care back and forth electronically so I can meet meaningful use. And I said, I'm not the only one out there. The other practices may or may not tell you. They'll just have to go find somebody to do it. When him and I had a chance to talk through that and what that meant to his practice, that was the tipping point. That made a huge difference. They've embraced OcuHub to the fullest. They're not on electronic medical records at this point, but they are utilizing that transfer of care with us so that we can meet our meaningful use, we can communicate digitally, and they can continue to be in the environment that they want to work in and not lose any of those referrals. So yes, David, it made a huge difference, because it would impact our referrals if we can't communicate with them electronically.
Great question and great answer. Chad, you get to return the favor here, asking David a question.
Oh, wow.
I know you're not ready for this. I know you want to trick him off.
No, I'm juggling. Stay serious, Chad. Stay serious, because you know how David and I like to jar back and forth. But I'm curious, David, that I guess you talked a little bit about it. I would like to hear more on how your group utilized your network that's connected with OcuHub to win contracts with the, I believe it's the Baptist group. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. I know it's not a question, but it's basically how do I get to the point, or what was your stepwise process in getting to a point where you guys could go to bat for, a group of covered individuals that your group cares for?
We had knocked on these doors for years and years, and they never were opened. And then when we had this OcuHub piece, we went to the powers to be in the different ACOs that are being created here in Kentucky. We've got 3 major ones, the Baptist, the Catholic system, and then a smaller one around the Louisville area. But what opened the doors when we mentioned things like the key words were chronic conditions. So diabetes and hypertension were the key factors. And when we told these folks that we could send the diabetic letters to the PCPs electronically, that was an eye-opener, because I think they told us research shows that only 15% of the faxes that the PCP receives on these diabetic letters ever even get read by the PCP. So when we said we could send that electronically, that opened their eyes. When we said that we could allow the PCPs to schedule back in our offices electronically, that opened their eyes. And then when we said that we could schedule between we could monitor where the patients were being scheduled, that opened their eyes, because then they could tell who was sending outside of their network, and it's very important from their standpoint to keep the patients in network, because if that patient ever leaves the network, then they lose complete control over cost. And so those were the key factors. But the chronic condition was the first thing that we talked about, and that opened the door. And again, these were doors that we'd knocked on for years and years and years. And when they saw the piece, this OcuHub piece, that goes back to the statement I made earlier. They all said, "I can't believe optometry has a tool like this. Why don't some of the other disciplines have this? And why haven't we seen this before?" And it just blew them completely out of the water. And it's allowed us to. We now have a contract with all 3 of the ACOs here in Kentucky that we are their eye care providers. And so it's technology is really opening the doors here in Kentucky for us.
That's surely mainstreaming eye care into the value-based healthcare. That's a great story, David. And you guys did great with asking each other questions. I think those were very substantive, and they gave a good summary of the kinds of issues we covered. We're coming to a close here in our session, and I'm going to thank both of you, Dr. Fleming and Dr. Jacob. It's always a privilege for me to have a chance to collaborate with you folks. I'm going to turn to the closing remarks by Melissa Pauley, who opened the session. So, Melissa, you want to sign us off?
Sure thing. We appreciate everyone joining us tonight, and I will be sending out an email to follow up with you guys with a brief survey, and then also some additional information. And certainly, should you want any other information regarding the presentation tonight or anything regarding OcuHub, then you can let me know that via email, and we'll follow up with you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much.